It's easy to forget that the liver plays a significant role in weight loss and fat loss in our metabolism. We're often thinking that the liver is just a filter, there to deal with the nasty things that we bring in, and that's certainly a component. But we have to remember that the liver is easily disrupted by, well, modern things that we bring into our lives, right? And if we end up with a disrupted or a broken liver, if you want to call it that, it certainly can impact weight loss, and it can certainly impact weight gain. See, the liver doesn't just act as a filter. The liver is heavily involved in metabolism, heavily involved in signaling and understanding how much glucose is in our bloodstream. It's heavily involved in fat breakdown and fat metabolism. The liver produces bile. Okay, people think the gallbladder produces bile. The gallbladder is just a receptacle for bile that the liver produces. So all of these things, even protein synthesis, the liver is involved in. So if we attenuate the ability of the liver, or we reduce the ability of the liver to do its job, we from the top down are impacting our metabolism. So we're going to cover two very important things. First category is, how does the liver impact weight gain? And how does a dysfunctional liver impact weight gain even more? And then we'll give practical things that you can implement into your life to A, reduce a fatty liver, but B, help the liver do its job better so your liver can get back to its key jobs of helping your metabolism. Now, if you have a disrupted or quote-unquote broken liver, you're gonna notice things. Just because you notice these things doesn't mean you automatically have a bad liver. You should obviously get work done and check it out for yourself. But if you start having really low energy, if you start gaining weight, if you start having rashes appear, if you start having just kind of weird symptoms overall like that, that's usually your first indicator. But how does the liver impact weight gain? Well, it really does this via two ways. Okay, for one, the liver is a major metabolic signaling system. So if your liver is not functioning well because it's fatty, or you're just overloading it with things like alcohol and things that your liver has to work hard to deal with, then all the metabolic systems that it has to use take a back seat. So for example, if you consume some glucose, your liver is going to recognize and use that recognition as a signal to tell the other organs what to do. So if this whole system is disrupted, then you're disrupting fuel system utilization, you're disrupting fat burning, you're disrupting glucose utilization, and all these things. Okay, then the second reason is we forget that the liver is involved in the breakdown of fats to begin with. If your liver is not working well, it cannot produce bile as well. If it doesn't produce bile as well, then it literally cannot emulsify fats and break them down. So then you're left with a more clogged liver that's causing more problems, and it ends up just kind of piling up from there. And then there's one other piece that people talk about that gets a little bit confusing, and that's the fructose side of things. We have to address this before I get into how you can fix things, okay? Because one of the first things that you can do that is within your control is make a concerted effort to reduce fructose that does not come from fruit. And let me explain why. There was a study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2021 that looked specifically at subjects that had a fatty liver. And you're thinking, I thought this video was about like my liver and detoxification. Well, the biggest issue we face as a society with our livers is fatty liver, whether it's non-alcoholic fatty liver or alcoholic fatty liver. And a fatty liver is still going to make your liver operate poorly. So they took subjects that had fatty liver, and for 6 weeks they had them reduce fructose in their diet entirely. So very little fructose, if not any fructose. And then they had one group consume sachets of glucose, and the other group consume sachets of fructose. They ate the same amount of calories. The group that had the fructose had a statistically significantly higher level of intrahepatic lipids, more liver fat. They ate the same amount of calories, okay? But glucose did not contribute to more liver fat, and fructose did. So it's not a calorie thing. We do know from other research that fructose cannot get taken up by cells within the body, only in the liver, which means it has a concentrated impact on the liver. Now, this isn't a hit piece on fructose. I eat a fair bit of fruit. And if you look at the big wide-angle vision of this, it actually only impacted liver fat by 0.7%. So you really have to be consuming a lot of fructose for this to be a problem. But if you're someone that consumes a lot of sodas or high fructose corn syrup, you may want to bring that down, because whatever little bit you're consuming over what your body can handle is a direct contributor to liver fat. Now, I say this because it's important to recognize that's a first step that you can do. But let's talk about specific things that you can focus on for one. Okay, the first most basic one is exercise. I know you're probably going to skip over this because you think, oh my gosh, this is so generic, but hear me out on this. The BMJ published a paper with 21 different studies that it looked at with over 1,500 different participants. Okay, what they found with this is that aerobic exercise in overweight individuals reduced liver fat by over 3.5%. That's huge. That's a huge, huge amount when you actually look at like that much data to see that big of a difference. Now you might be thinking, well, yeah, they lost weight, so duh, they're gonna lose liver fat if they lost overall fat. And that is absolutely true. However, there are studies that are also demonstrating that that doesn't have to be the case. Even when subjects do not lose weight, when aerobic exercise is in the equation, there were still significant decreases in intrahepatic lipids. So, by increasing the mitochondrial function of our cells and improving mitochondrial function at the liver level, the liver literally gets better at metabolizing fats, meaning it's less likely to store them. If you're funneling a bunch of fats into the liver and it's not good at metabolizing them, it makes sense that it would store them. If it is good at metabolizing them, then fats that are getting funneled into the liver can at least get oxidized and put somewhere and burned, right? Another thing is exercise increases insulin sensitivity. If our insulin sensitivity is better, then we have less circulating triglycerides, less circulating lipids that are going to circumnavigate their way back to the liver. And lastly, exercise is going to reduce the inflammation, which is going to reduce the propensity for the liver to store. Now that's very basic. We know exercise is good. So let's get into some very specific things that you can do. The next one is taking care of your microbiome. People do not realize that the microbiome plays a significantly critical role in also how our liver functions. Why? It's indirect and possibly direct if you start looking at some of the in vitro research. But indirectly, by taking care of our microbiome, we are creating more in the way of short-chain fatty acids that send signals not only to the brain to regulate appetite, to regulate hormones, but also to our cells to take up glucose better. Now, what does this have to do with a liver? What does sugar and blood sugar have to do with the liver? Well, if our blood sugar is high and does not get taken up by the cells, it circulates through our bloodstream, and eventually it makes its way back to the liver. And when it makes its way back to the liver says, what am I supposed to do with all this glucose, bro? Like, I don't have anywhere to put it. Like, the cells aren't taking it. I guess I got to deal with it. It becomes my problem. So the liver's like, well, the only way that I'm going to deal with it is I'm going to package it back up into this triglyceride form, and I'm going to store it right here for later. Boom. Fatty liver, right? So if we can improve glucose uptake, we can improve fatty liver. Now, eating things like psyllium husk, eating things that have high fiber content that are going to be soluble fibers, so chia seeds, flax seeds, and you don't need copious amounts of them. Psyllium is a really quick way to do this because you don't need to add crazy things to the diet. It's really pretty simple. Now, with that, you can also add a probiotic into the mix. With probiotics, you're potentially expanding the amount of bacteria that you have within your gut that might make you able to create more of these short-chain fatty acids. You're creating what are called butyrate producers. I popped a link down below for the probiotic that I recommend. I'm not a big supplement guy. I recommend a few here and there, but probiotics are one that I think people that are going on sort of a weight loss endeavor or they're trying to change their lifestyle, I think probiotics can help because I really do believe personally that the microbiome is at the heart of a lot of our lifestyle. Like if we changed and have a good lifestyle, our microbiome was generally better, and vice versa with a bad lifestyle. So I like Seed because they're unique and their technology is very cool. So they have that capsule inside of a capsule with a prebiotic and a probiotic. You don't have to get it by any stretch of imagination. You can skip through this part, but I popped a link down below that'll save you 15% off if you use that code, Thomas15, saves you 15% off your entire order through Seed. It's worth a shot. You might start noticing a difference pretty quick, but it's also just something that I think generally is good for people that are changing their diet. So that link's down below. Now, what foods can you eat to help out the liver? This is where it gets kind of crazy. I'm normally not the kind of guy that says, hey, go eat this food and it's going to magically fix this organ. But when you start looking at specific citrus fruits, the research is powerful. Now, if you've ever seen specific medications, sometimes they will say, do not consume with grapefruit juice or do not consume with grapefruit. Why? Because the grapefruit can actually make the liver operate differently, which actually might make that medication not do the same job or metabolize differently. That's how powerful grapefruit is. Now, there's some interesting research that shows that grapefruit juice, or like a half of a grapefruit, can lead to increases in what's called cytochrome P450. Now, cytochrome P450 is at the heart of liver detoxification and being able to deal with things. This ultimately led to a higher level of what is called quinone reductase. When you increase quinone activity, it's a very clear indicator that you're increasing the liver's ability to detoxify. I hate using the word detoxify. It sounds cheeky, it sounds overly marketed, whatever, but it is a job of the liver, so you're essentially helping the filtration system. So how much grapefruit? We're talking like a half of a grapefruit, and there's very little sugar in it. So if we're concerned about the fructose, it's really a moot point with grapefruit. Now, there was another study that took a look at Oro Blanco juice, which is a little bit sweeter, but still pretty mild in the grand scheme of citrus fruits. This one directly increased glutathione production. So there's something in citrus fruits, and it's not related to the sugar. So with this, we look at another paper that looked at what's called CPP, which is citrus peel powder, which you can actually get online. Citrus peel powder seemed to decrease inflammation and decrease liver fat gain associated with a high-fat diet. High-fat, high-calorie diets can lead to liver fat too. Any high-calorie diet can. But in this case, CPP seemed to reduce the inflammation involved that would normally come with a high-fat diet, and it reduced the liver fat that was accumulated. We don't really know the mechanisms why, but it seems like citrus might be a powerful thing. So citrus without the sugar is what we want to lean into. My advice here would be a half a grapefruit in the morning. It's pretty powerful, and if you put a little bit of stevia or monk fruit on it, put it under the broiler, it tastes pretty darn good too. The next one is going to be cruciferous vegetables. The fiber's great, don't get me wrong, but we're talking about something called glucosinolates here. Glucosinolates are going to drive up proper filtration within the liver. And if you look at the research that was published in Food Sciences, they took a look at unblanched Brussels sprouts. And they found that when subjects consumed unblanched Brussels sprouts daily for 2 weeks, they had massive improvements in quinone activity. So the overall just filtration abilities and detoxification abilities in the liver went up significantly. They also found increased levels of sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is in cruciferous vegetables, and with that, you're typically going to notice higher levels of concentrated sulforaphane in the liver itself. So with that, we're definitely seeing something. And the research is still a little bit bleak as to why this is happening, but it's definitely a good thing. The number 4 thing that you can be doing, and this is something that you can be avoiding, is avoiding rancid polyunsaturated fats. What does that look like? A polyunsaturated fat is going to be a canola oil. It's going to be even a fish oil if it's gone rancid. It's going to be sunflower oil. It's going to be any of these sort of seed oils. Now, am I opposed to seed oils? No, I'm opposed to rancid seed oils. When a seed oil becomes oxidized, it becomes very toxic in many ways. It becomes so oxidized that the body has to work hard to deal with it. And who takes the brunt of that load? The liver, right? So with that, the liver has to prioritize dealing with this rancid oil. Now, the liver can handle it. It's not like the liver can't handle it. But when the liver is also trying to deal with all the other 500 different things it's multitasking for, then it becomes a problem. So you combine that, eating rancid seed oils, along with drinking some alcohol that's already demanding a lot from your liver. You can see how the liver's just like, bro, how do you expect me to do this, right? And then what's going to take a back seat? Fat burning, metabolism. So then all of a sudden you start seeing these symptoms arise, weight gain, you see all of this, right? So the best thing that you can do as far as the oils are concerned is use monounsaturated fats when you can. Use olive oil, use macadamia nut oil, use avocado oil. They're stable. They're not going to go as rancid as quickly. Okay? And if you have the seed oils, just get them fresh and get them in an expeller pressed fashion where they're not dealt with a bunch of chemicals and solvents and things like that. And the very, very last thing is if you're going to drink alcohol, first of all, I recommend you don't. I think we're starting to see a pattern in the health community. Most health advocates are being like, you know what, alcohol's definitely a poison. Let's just not consume it. But if you're absolutely going to, the more distilled that you can, the better. And also ones that don't have congeners, so avoiding the brandy, avoiding the rums, because that's one additional layer the liver has to deal with. As always, I'll see you tomorrow.